In Commander 2021, they released a card called Ruxa, Patient Professor, that had some unique designs behind its abilities. It was a creature that gave additional power to creatures that had no abilities, and allowed them to assign damage as though they weren't blocked. And now if you look at the full card art version of Ruxa, illustrated by Al Gord, you'll see that she is writing some symbols on the chalkboard for her students. But did you know that this symbol here is one of the symbols on the card Muraganda Petroglyphs, illustrated by Scott Altman, released all the way back in Future Sight? The reason this is such an Easter egg is that the ability of Muraganda Petroglyphs is almost exactly the same, giving power to creatures that have no abilities either, which was quite a flavor win almost 14 years in the making. Merch, like, comment, subscribe. Hello and welcome back to Basics, episode number 27, a show where I take EDH commanders and try to find the perfect basic lands to fit them. I love seeing someone sit down with some beautiful basic lands, but something I love even more is seeing how well those lands match their commanders. One quick note before we begin. I like to give the artists credit for their artworks, but I may not pronounce their names perfectly. I'll try my best, but please forgive me and correct me if that ever happens. I also wanted to say thank you for all of you who have watched and enjoyed my videos in the past. It takes a lot of work to make these videos, and I really appreciate your support and your comments. But first on the list, we've got a 5-color commander that I'm very excited to showcase. It's Reaper King from Shadowmoor. This card is just dripping with personality. Its harsh dark tones, overshadowed by washed out greens and yellows, give Reaper King a fearsome presence. This color scheme makes finding lands a unique experience because most basic artworks try to evoke a sense of calm. And even though I had a great deal of difficulty finding a basic mountain that matched aesthetically, I was able to get close and find a 5-color pair that I really enjoyed. Starting with modern borders, take a look at this forest from Champions of Kamigawa, illustrated by Rob Alexander. This plains from Commander Legends, illustrated by Ting Ting Ye, and this mountain from Mirrodin Besieged, and this amazing swamp from Magic Premier Shop promos, illustrated by Adam Paquette, and this island from Shadowmoor, illustrated by Omar Ryan. It was very fun finding lands that gave off this high contrast, ragged color scheme in all 5 colors of Magic, and while 5-color decks don't run that many basic lands, I'm sure it will look great when you assemble them all in game. I do have a second pairing for you to see as well. I felt like Reaper King's artwork is reminiscent of the old style of illustration of Magic the Gathering artworks. So in keeping with that, I wanted to go with old bordered cards that also contain strong line work and heavy shadowed elements. And I think I came close. Take a look at this swamp illustrated by Ron Spencer from Invasion, this plains from Onslaught illustrated by David Martin, this forest illustrated by John Avon also from Onslaught, this mountain from Tempest illustrated by Mark Poole, and this island from Invasion. I liked this pairing a lot for its borders, and I feel like they evoke a sense of agedness that feels in tandem with Reaper King's visual style. Now for a bit of a tone shift, second on the list we've got Gyome Master Chef from Core Set 2021. Interestingly themed for a Golgari commander, Gyome has a lot of reds and warm tones in his card art due to the fire from the pot behind him, and finding lands was particularly difficult because of how strongly he communicates the restaurant aesthetic. However, I was able to find lands in this color pairing that were matching color-wise and would look good when lined up with him in game. Take a look at this forest from the Dual Decks Knights vs. Goblins, illustrated by Larry Elmore, and pairing it with this swamp illustrated by Mike Birek from Core Set 2013. I really like how the highlighted colors match up so well with Guillaume's artwork, coupling the reds of the hearth with the sunset in the trees of the basic lands. For a selection with older borders, take a look at this next pairing for your review. This forest from Invasion, illustrated by Alan Polak, and this swamp from Mirage, illustrated by Bob Eggleton. Like Reaper King, I really enjoyed this pairing because of the borders, helping to age the commander up and give it a dignified style. And finally, I wanted to try and find a pairing that at least hinted of the themes of eating that Gyome exemplifies. So take a look at this forest illustrated by Adam Paquette from Jumpstart, of a deer about to be eaten, and following it up with this swamp from Concept Art here. I felt like this wasn't perfect, but the rib cage peeking out of the swamp from Concept Art here, and the food chain being displayed in the forest, gives a kind of tongue-in-cheek reference to what playing a Gyome deck is going to be like. Third up, we've got Atemsis All-Seeing from Magic 2020. This is one of the reasons why I love doing these videos, because this is a commander I've never seen before, but it has absolutely gorgeous artwork. The 6 blue eyes on her wings fits her playstyle of defeating an opponent by having 6 specific cards in her hand. And those radiating blue colors combined, surrounded by the stonework around her, gave me a few ideas for pairings, and I was pretty satisfied with the results. Take a look at this island from Return to Ravnica, illustrated by John Avon, that exemplifies the blues and the structural elements of Atemsis' artwork. Or, to emphasize and match the bright blue color, take a look at this island from Throne of Eldraine, illustrated by Mark Poole, that while it doesn't match the scenery, it definitely evokes her mystical elements. 2 of my favorites are this island from Streets of New Capenna, illustrated by Jed Chevrier, that has a winged statue mimicking her alongside the blues in the architecture. And finally, this island from Jumpstart, illustrated by Piotr Dura, which I think captures the scenery and styling almost perfectly. This was a treat to try and match up, because the art and the lore of Atemsis was open-ended enough to be able to have the player interpret how to visually identify with her, which made it easy to find matching basics. 4th on the list, we've got a partner pairing. It's Thrasios, Triton hero, and Kodama of the East Tree, which was one of the easier partner pairings commanders covered on this channel. Because they are only 2 colors, the goal became to blend the ideas of the heavy blue emphasis on Thrasios with the wiry and root tendril appearance of Kodama, which ended up being easier than I initially realized. So I have 3 pairings for you to choose from. Take a look at this forest from Dominaria, illustrated by Jonas DeRoe, and pairing it with this merfolk-inspired island from Jumpstart, illustrated by Mauricio Calli. I liked how the deep-colored elements of the forest matches Kodama very well, and the background of the island matches so well color-wise with Thrasios, they almost seem like they're part of the same picture. Following that merfolk theme, I wanted the second pairing to be thematic. Take a look at this island from Dominaria, illustrated by Dimitar Marinsky, with merfolk swimming in the foreground, and this forest from Jumpstart, illustrated by Cliff Childs, that has a treefolk emphasis. I loved this pairing, and it might be my favorite of the groupings, because of how perfectly it fits both flavor and function of the commander while also matching its colors as well, which felt like a win in my book. However, for a third idea, I felt like having Thrasios exemplify the blue side and having Kodama match the green side would be increased if the lands had to do the opposite. So take a look at this very blue-toned forest from Ikoria, illustrated by Yang Hao Han, and this very green-inspired island, illustrated by Dimitar Marinsky. I thought this was a tasteful reversal of color concepting that is only possible in a Simic-themed deck, which makes it super unique and enjoyable to see played. And finally, we've got a fun one. It's Vaevictus Asmadi the Dire from M19. This artwork is very intense in how dark it is. The deep reds and blacks covering the outer edges of the frame help pull focus on the bright patch of light that encircles his form. And the lack of the green in his color identity in his card art had to be considered as well when choosing basics for him. Starting with some full art lands, I found myself very drawn to the conceptual lands of the Battle for Zendikar, because of his very undefined background. Take a look at this full art swamp from Battle for Zendikar, this mountain from Battle for Zendikar, and this forest from the same set and artist. I really liked how these lands don't have any grounding context besides their elemental shapes, and I felt like it was a very elegant initial pairing of lands for Vaevictus' high energy card art. But for this next pairing, I wanted to go darker, and really lean in on the deep black and red tones that Vaevictus displays. Take a look at this swamp illustrated by Paul Scott Canavan from Throne of Eldraine, this beautiful forest illustrated by Sam Burley from Magic Fest promo cards, and this mountain from Innistrad Crimson Vow. When lined up together, all of these help emphasize both the reds and the hints of orangish yellow from Vaevictus' armor and card frame, which made it worth considering. Along that same line of thinking, I wanted to try again from a different perspective. Take a look at this swamp illustrated by Jonas DeRoe from the Game Night promos, and combining it with this very dark mountain from Innistrad Midnight Hunt, illustrated by Mohamed Ferdo, and finally coupling it with this forest from Theros, illustrated by Adam Paquette, that I feel looks very striking to me. The cool part of this pairing image-wise is that each has a dark exterior, surrounding a bright point of golden red light in the background, which matches Vaevictus' style to a T. But there you have it, 5 more commanders sorted, for which basic lands I think match them best. But I want to see what you think. Tell me which commanders you'd like me to try and pick up basic lands for. Comment below and let me know, and have a great day.